Welcome to the party. I'm Sam Ekstrom of Locked On Sports Minnesota. Yes, the fire is back because I've got a hot take today on who the Vikings should avoid in free agency.
I'm Luke Braun of the Locked On Vikings podcast, and I have been called back for a third interview with the Indianapolis Colts.
Luke Inman on Twitter at Luke_Spinman, ready to watch future Vikings center John Michael Schmitz at day 3 of Senior Bowl practice later on today after the show.
That's a true football guy right there. It's Sam with the Lukes today on the Minnesota Football Party. Let's do it.
Locked On Sports Minnesota podcast. It's endless Minnesota Vikings talk with the diverse voices of your local experts. It's time for the Minnesota Football Party. It's your guys hanging out talking next level Vikings football. So join in with Pro Football Network's Arif Hassan, Locked On Vikings Luke Braun, Superior Sports Talk's Luke Inman, and Vikings insider Sam Ekstrom, plus the biggest names in Minnesota football for the Minnesota Football Party. And it starts now.
Welcome into the Minnesota Football Party. I'm Sam Ekstrom. Those are the Lukes, Inman, and Braun. And today we dive into Vikings free agency. Which free agents should they let walk? Which should they keep? Plus, can the Vikings land Ejiro Evero as defensive coordinator? That and plenty more on the Minnesota Football Party. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. And Locked On Sports Minnesota is available to you. Amazon Fire Stick or Roku, the Locked On Sports Minnesota app. Watch us on your smart TVs or on your mobile devices or laptops, the smaller screens on YouTube. Subscribe to Locked On Sports Minnesota. Also free and available wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, leave a comment below. Who is the Vikings' next defensive coordinator going to be? Is it going to be Ejiro Evero, who seems to be in flux right now? The Vikings are in flux as they await the naming of their defensive coordinator. Seems like they're in a holding pattern, guys, and that makes me think that Ejiro Evero is their preferred candidate if he is willing to come here, if he does not get hired to a different, maybe more preferable job. Luke Braun, you've been tweeting about this morning already. The dominoes are slowly falling, but they're not exactly clearing things up very, very rapidly here for the Vikings.
Not with Evero, but so Vic Fangio, as we record this like 30 minutes ago, took the defensive coordinator job with Miami, which he had already agreed to do, and then he kind of balked on that and maybe he was going to go to Denver, but nope, he's going to Miami. So that actually means with Sean Desai, another guy the Vikings are pretty high on, Sean Desai has now missed out on every job that he's interviewed for except for this one, except the Vikings D coordinator. So if the Vikings want him, they got him. With Evero, now we have to wait to see if Denver even lets him out of his contract, which they're going to talk about today. So as you are listening to this, you might know more about that than we do. And we have to see what happens with the Arizona and Indianapolis head coaching searches, both of which Evero is heavily involved in. So we've got to wait for all that stuff to play out with him. It seems like the Vikings are really high on him. It makes sense why they would be. It sounds like Evero thinks about things the same way. He says situational masters even. They came off the same kind of McVay world as Kevin O'Connell did. Even worked with kwesi-adofo-mensah for a year in San Francisco as a low-level assistant. So same scheme and all that stuff, a lot of the same philosophies, and seems to come in with an emphasis on pressure on the QB and a little bit more favor toward like man coverage. So it seems like he comes in with the exact philosophy you want to fix this problem. So I'm a huge fan of this idea, but it might be pie in the sky. There's a lot of stuff that needs to clear out first.
Yeah, super fluid situation. Like you said, kind of changing by the day. Luke's done a lot of research on this stuff, so I'm kind of leaning on him. Arif even sold me on Evero 2 weeks ago on this show, kind of enticed about his ability to create and mold a defense around his players' unique skill sets, right? Like if that means you're standing za'darius Smith up on one side in 3-4 alignment, but then having Daniil Hunter with his hand in the ground in a more 4-3 alignment on the other side, and he can get creative and find ways to do that. So that's kind of the background he brings to the table. Had decent success in the past. And although I think anyone is going to be an upgrade from what we had last year, I do think when you look at the options left on the table, if you can't get Flores in the building, who I still think is my option A with his resume and just how he's helped transform a lot of defenses with his track record, but if he's off the board, then Evero would definitely be my plan B. And I'd still feel pretty good about that.
And one of the deals there is only one guy can take the Arizona job.
Right.
So he can kind of take the other one. And the Colts job, there can be a world where like Flores takes one and Evero takes the other.
Mm-hmm.
But the Colts job, they have gone to second interviews with like 8 people. So it could be somebody we're not even looking at, somebody off an offensive side of the ball or something. So there's a lot of stuff a lot of like permutations, but it's really difficult to see a world where the Vikings don't end up with one of those two guys just off of chance. And if they do, then they just hire Sean Desai, and they're probably pretty happy with that.
Yeah, Evero seems like the much more likely realistic situation or scenario here. Is Flores kind of a pipe dream? Like what percentage chance, just knowing what
I'd
you
say
guys know?
Evero's more of a pipe dream.
It feels like
he's in such high demand
right.
that it feels harder to get him. Whereas Brian Flores, he has interviewed for 2 jobs that are still available: Arizona head coach and Minnesota Vikings D coordinator.
Mm-hmm.
So if he doesn't get the head coach job and he wants to be a DC, that's it. There's no more competition. So that seems a lot more doable. But Evero has been interviewed for every job that can interview for him. Even the Falcons asked, and he got blocked by Denver, but the Falcons asked like many weeks ago, and they've already hired their guy.
So Flores or Evero, each one of you, who's your pick if you had both?
Yep. So, well, this is the question I want to pose, and I think in regards to both these candidates. So Evero is the candidate that you created in a lab. Like he is perfect for this situation because he's got KOC connection. Mm-hmm. He's got Kwesi connection. He has an emphasis on passing defense, which the Vikings badly need. He has a great connection with players. He's got a pretty nice coaching tree behind him. He's young. Like all of this is good. So are you cool with the next Mike Tomlin? Like, are you cool with someone coming in and going in eyes wide open, knowing this might be a 1-year pact? And this, if you have any measure of success, this guy is gone. Do you want that? Are you okay with having one?
Absolutely.
Great.
100%. 100%.
Okay.
There's no way around that. You can't. The
really
way to
not.
play around that is to hire bad people.
Right. You look
You
at the
don't wanna
blueprint, you look at the landscape of the NFL, it's so fluid year to year. That means, all right, in 2, 3, 4 years, there's going to be a larger coaching tree and there's going to be more options at hand. And if that means as well that for those 2, 3 years that I had this guy, that he was successful, of course you're going to take that 10 out of 10 times, aren't you?
Yeah, it's so much easier if you think about like what problem that presents, right? That the world where we hire Evero and then he gets a head coaching job in 2024. What year is it? If like that world means the Vikings defense got fixed and he got credit for it, which is great, right? We fixed the defense. So point in that column. And the problem now is we have this machine that runs the way it's supposed to, but we just need someone to drive it. And that problem is so much easier to solve than the one we're in right now, which is we don't even know if we want to stick to this, or do we want to go back and start rebuilding something else completely from scratch schematically? Or do we want to do we want to screw up the development of somebody like Brian Asamoah, who made lots of strides, to go with somebody who's back to the scheme that they just fired everybody over from 2021? Like, what do we like? This is a way harder situation to navigate than all right, that worked great. Let's see if we can find somebody as similar to this as possible, because at least you have some direction. So I'm not worried about it because it means that we fixed things and we will have fewer problems to deal with next offseason in that scenario. That's a good scenario to me.
And when you talk about that specific example, like somebody just needs to step in and drive the car now, you would even assume worst case scenario, maybe his defensive assistant or somebody underneath him that understands the blueprint now, how to drive this machine, should be able to step in and offer somewhat of a smooth transition if that was the case.
I got drawn and quartered in the comments section last week for suggesting Mike Pettin as a good candidate.
You walked right into that.
And
that's justice, and that's the marketplace of ideas.
I know it's not going to happen. Like, I never thought it was the betting favorite to happen. I just didn't think it was as bad of an idea as people thought, and I still don't. And I still think that he's probably pretty capable and more capable than people think. But if next year we're in this position where it's a good defense and Mike Pettin was like a high level assistant, is he suddenly a better option to take the reins of that defense in 2024 after someone built it up to be really good? Then do you just hand it off to that's where I think there's inconsistency there. I don't want to go down the Pettin road necessarily. But Luke, your original question, Evero or Flores, I think Evero is preferred. Flores, I think, is a similar deal. Again, I think he could be gone with any measure of success, and it sounds like you guys are fine with that. But I think the bias is that we just know more about Flores. We know more about the Flores name and what he's about. We don't know as much about Desai. I just can't judge those guys either way. So I think fans should not be disappointed if it ends up being Desai, knowing that Evero might be kind of unlikely based on how popular he is. Do you think is that a major downgrade, Braun, in your estimation, if it ends up being a Desai?
I'm pretty good with all three of those guys. Somebody just asked me on Twitter, what's your ranking? And I said, it's Evero and then a tiny gap and then Flores and then a tiny gap and then Desai. But I'm really happy with either of those three. And I am not a fan of Pettin. But to your point, I will say the difference, I think, between if the defense gets fixed next year, but then whether it's Flores or Evero and they go get a head coaching job and then we bring in Pettin, it kind of is better. Yeah, because continuity, the thing I don't like about giving Pettin the job is that it represents continuity for a unit that does not need continuity.
Right.
But if they fix things, continuity feels a lot better. So yeah, then I would be a little more open to that idea.
As long as you're comfortable, KOC hones him in, says, listen, don't get wild here. All right. Don't start.
And now you have a blueprint for him to follow.
Right. Here's the plan.
Where he goes, oh, okay, this works with these players. Now I know what to do. It's a lot harder to screw that up.
Yeah, Flores too, just knowing his Patriots background and the defense he wants to run, being the draft guy that I am, you're almost pigeonholed into taking a quarterback in round one because his defense needs that shutdown cover guy, which is fine in this loaded class of cornerbacks, unless wild card scenario, you want to plan on maybe trading for a Jalen Ramsey for a first and a third round pick or something like that. But it does sound less and less likely Flores would be the realistic option for them when it's all said and done over a guy like Evero.
We are evaluating Vikings in-house free agents after I tell you about FanDuel and the app that you need at your Super Bowl party. It's America's #1 sportsbook and our new partners here at Locked On, FanDuel. Download FanDuel now or head to the website so you can bet Super Bowl 57 with a no-sweat first bet. You'll get up to $3,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. FanDuel lets you bet on everything from the money line to point spreads to all of those scintillating prop bets that we will be talking about on this show and probably putting a parlay together next week. The FanDuel Sportsbook app is safe, secure, and super easy to use, and you get paid your winnings instantly after the big game is over. So join FanDuel today at FanDuel.com/lockedon to claim your no-sweat first bet on Super Bowl 57. FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Guys, I've got 14 Vikings UFAs. You got a couple IRFAs. You got a couple RFAs. I've got 14.
Love a good IRFA, don't you? Once in a while.
Well, I've got 14.
A couple good IRFAs this year. Tonga and Brandel for less than $1 million a pop, and they can't negotiate.
Let's go.
Good spot.
Bring them back. 14 UFAs. I have split them into 5 categories. Tell me if you agree or how you would split them up. I've got one Vikings UFA who I would negotiate with at market value. I don't think you'll need many guesses to guess who it is. Do you want to take a stab?
Dalvin Tomlinson.
Yes. Dalvin Tomlinson is the one guy who I would not try to short shrift. I would give him what he deserves. I like his age. I like his production. Whatever money you can create with the cap by cutting vets, I would prioritize Dalvin Tomlinson. Any disagreement there?
I'm with you. Like, you kind of got to separate them into tiers, right? Maybe a good, better, best, or like top tier guy, one role player, a bargain bin guy. But yeah, of those big names, I'm with you. Pat P, Bradbury, Dalvin Tomlinson. I'm going with Tomlinson. I mean, you're talking about a defense that was already soft last year. And then just the thought of like taking him out of the equation, it gets scary. Like, when he was healthy on the field, he was a pivotal piece of that defense in the trenches. This team needs more strength, just more toughness up front. And you remove a guy like Tomlinson in the middle, you're only making things exponentially worse. And I like the versatility too. I mean, he can play nose, he can play 3-tech if they switch back to a 4-3. So the versatility, kind of a nice little bonus there, just having some scheme flexibility up front, because without him, now you're relying on guys like James Lynch, Jonathan Bullard, think he's a free agent, actually. Ross Blacklock.
Probably drafting someone, honestly.
You got to draft somebody. Don't have a lot of
or
picks
getting a
to
different
draft
free
guys,
agent,
though. And some of those guys were fine last year, but I don't think any of them were legitimate full-time starters in the NFL coming off last year. Also, too, when you think about Pat P, you still got 4 bodies back there, right? That you hope can fight it out and just emerge as the new starter. Duke Shelley probably on one side, but then Andrew Booth, Dantzler, and a Caleb Evans. That just gives me a lot more confidence than the group of defensive linemen I just named backing up Dalvin. I think Bradbury kind of is what it is. I mean, he didn't light the world on fire anyways. You hope you can find a similar replacement in free agency or the draft. Arif seems to think the free agents are a little bit better than I do. I'm also starting to fall in love with John Michael Schmitz from the Gophers. Maybe a plug-and-play day one starter in the middle there, especially if you can trade back in the first round and still get him. But yeah, then there's just a big drop-off in talent with those guys. When you look at the free agents, it seems like those are the big 3. Are those the 3 guys you had circled, Sam? Because when I just took a quick look at it, it was those 3, and then a big drop-off to like the Irv Smith, Chandon Sullivan. Who else was on there?
So first of all, this has happened to me before, and I got fooled the first time. You got to go to over the cap. I went to Spot Track, doesn't list Duke Shelley. I don't know what did Duke Shelley do to Spot Track. Over the cap is correct. So there's actually 15. My bad. I think Dalvin Tomlinson is the blue chipper you pursue. Mm-hmm. I think in terms of the other sort of blue chippers, Patrick Peterson is on my priority with an asterisk list. If Patrick Peterson wants multi-years, I say no. If Patrick Peterson wants 10 million, I say no. I would do Patrick Peterson at like 1 year and 6. But I'm going to be strict about my parameters.
Doable. That seems really doable because it's about, what did he make this year?
4.
I mean,
4. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's, I mean, he kind of said, like, I understand that I'm like an older guy now, and this is no longer about the money. This is about ring chasing, and this is about legacy, and this is about, just being a part of something and all that. Mm-hmm. So, and he's already vocally said that he wants to come back.
So then you've got, if you consider them blue chippers, Bradbury and Irv. Now, we've already established in the last 2 minutes that Spot Track is not gospel. They are estimating market value for Irv Smith at $10 million annually. Whew. I think that's ludicrous. Good and they're estimating Bradbury at 12. They're estimating Bradbury at 4 years, 48. What? I could honestly see somebody doing that with Bradbury.
Honestly, Bradbury,
I could totally see someone doing it, and I'm not into it. I just did this episode on Locked On Vikings, and my thing with Bradbury was I think the free market is best for him. I think he makes more money on the market than he does just taking whatever the Vikings would offer.
Yep.
And I think it's also best for the Vikings too. If you're going to let Bradbury test the free market, well, now you're just in free agency, and he's just one of many free agent centers. And I think you can probably get a more efficient deal with somebody else. And I feel the same way about Irv Smith. But yeah, I think it's not that crazy to see those guys go out and get paid on just like potential, or somebody who had a really high draft thing on him that doesn't want to give up, that says, the Vikings just misused him, or maybe he can stay healthy with me, that kind of thing. I could totally see it.
Irv surprises me quite a bit. Can't see him getting 10. Bradbury, much more realistic. How long until Bradbury's a Pro Bowl center on another team? 1 year, 2 years, max?
Yeah, 1 year. 1 year.
That would be tough to swallow. The Irv would blow me away if he got 10.
Yeah.
He needs a prove it deal. And usually prove it deals they're not that much. I mean, not when you've been hurt 2 years in a row and you've really never had a big year.
The one thing he's got going for him is the tight end pool in the NFL, just in general. I mean, rich at the top, but
there's like three guys.
Football players know this. Like, there's just not a lot outside those big 4, big 5, right? Like, it gets thin. So, Irv, second round pick, top 50 pick, only 25 next year. Yeah, no track record, not a good resume at all. Battled injuries his whole career, but somebody might spend a little bit more than we assume. Don't think we're talking 10, but a little bit more than we assume, just given the market.
So I would classify those two as stay away. If there's any type of cost that resembles that. I would also, I think, stay away from a starter last year, Chandon Sullivan. I think that nickels are cheap, and I think you can try to upgrade. Nickels are so cheap.
Of all these, I'll be a little frustrated if they bring him back. I would love for them to roll the dice, not even roll the dice, just switch it out. You tried it, got a little taste of it. I don't think it was super successful. I think there's definitely room for improvement there. I think finding a better solution at slot cornerback on this defense could go a long way, just in the big picture for this defense. They're not that expensive anyways, too. And there's a couple good ones in the draft, too, specifically inside cornerbacks, loaded class of corners this year. So, yeah, between those two options, I really do hope they let Chandon walk one way or another.
I would say that you've probably got about a half a dozen like vet minimums that you're giving out to some of these guys this offseason. And I think it's kind of a draw out of the hat, honestly. Like, and there's sort of some indifference here. If they bring BC back, non-guaranteed 1 year deal, great.
Yeah, whatever.
If they bring Mullins back on a 1 year deal, great. Like Udo, Schlotman. I think I'm fine with those flyers because they're going to be cheap. They're going to be 1 year. They're going to be depth pieces. I think the ones that you circle as sort of intrigue are Madison and Joseph. Greg Joseph he's your kicker. Are you satisfied enough with him to just bring it back and accept kind of the unpredictability that Greg Joseph offers? What do you do there?
No, I'm not interested. I think you can do better on the open market. I think you can do better with an undrafted free agent, whoever you like, who doesn't get drafted. I think you can absolutely upgrade on Greg Joseph without spending significant resources at all. He's not been good.
I wish that reference would sort just overall kick percentage, because if you combine the extra points and field goals, it tells a very bleak story of Greg Joseph. Like the field goal percentage this year, 28. That's not even good because he missed so many for 50 plus. Extra point percentage, 24th out of 20. Yeah. So this year ended up pretty bad for Joseph, even though he had a nice stretch kind of toward the middle end of the season. But in the 3 years he's been entrusted as kicker, it's been that way. Like he's really never had an above average kicking season. And I think what do we think's
going to happen here?
Okay, I'm looking up his stats right now. Not great, huh? They were really that bad. I knew they were bad. Okay.
We're just used to it because we're Vikings fans.
4 for 10 plus 50, but that's 50 plus. How many kickers are going 10 for 10? But man, they're really not that great, especially compared to the rest of the league.
Yeah, I could see them drafting late, just finding someone off the scrap heap, probably not going to downgrade, to be honest. And until you find your guy at kicker, I think that you need to be a little more willing to. I know Vikings have gotten in trouble with this, but if you don't get attached, I think it's easier to move on. A lot of teams have done this. A lot of teams will go through kickers and then they kind of strike gold. And then it's Alexander Madison. Last guy I wanted to talk about. Luke, we talked about this on the show yesterday. Let's run it by Braun. So Dalvin Cook gets cut. Let's assume that that's a truism here. Would you mind bringing back Madison on a team-friendly deal?
I think, would I mind? Not necessarily, if that ended up being the decision. But I don't see it being very likely because of the way things would go down. If they cut Dalvin Cook, they're making the decision to cut Dalvin Cook before they're making the decision of whether or not to bring back Alexander Mattison, because they're cutting Dalvin Cook probably to help them get under the cap for the new league year. And that just means that in the calendar, that decision comes first. But also, Alexander Mattison is also one of those kinds of guys that feels like he can get starter money on the open market. But if you're cutting Dalvin Cook and essentially making Alexander Mattison the de facto starter before he hits free agency, then you're paying that dude. Like he's not doing that on a team-friendly deal. The only way you get Alexander Mattison on a team-friendly deal is if you let him hit free agency, let him test the market. He doesn't like what he finds, and then he comes back, and you say, oh yeah, go test the market, doors open, we'll do that. So the way that the timeline works out, I think you have to get that team-friendly deal, you have to let Alexander Mattison into the market, let him test it, let him see what he finds. And then if he comes back, then I guess sure. But at that point, well, now you've got access to the entire free agent market. Why aren't we talking about then like Jamal Williams or Raheem Mostert or Boston Scott or any of these other guys that could potentially be interesting free agents? Rashad Penny is an interesting one. Like there's all these guys. There's a lot of guys on the
loaded
market
out there.
Yeah,
it's loaded. So I can't see
so
Madison.
We don't need to be attached to the guy that was here before.
Totally. No, I agree. I can't see Madison dipping his toe into that free agent pool and loving what he finds out is over on the other side of that wall. But I mean, he's been a very solid RB2 for 4 straight years now, and he's still a little bit younger coming off his rookie deal. Somebody could probably pay him a little bit extra than what the Vikings are going to at least initially offer him. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. There's so many big name running backs. So much of the league now is running back by committee. I mean, how many 6, 7 teams maybe have that true number one workhorse kind of guy? It's going to be interesting to see again, just what type of money, not just Madison, but a lot of those names that Luke just mentioned, the Jamal Williams, the Kareem Hunts, the Miles Sanders, those types of guys, knowing that the NFL really does like to churn these guys out, grind their tires down for 4 or 5 years, and then let them walk and go find another guy on day 3 of the draft kind of thing.
I don't think the free agent market's going to be kind to Madison. I said that yesterday, and I'll reiterate it for this new audience potentially. I don't know if he gives you, because I don't think he's going to get paid as a starter. I think he's at best, I think he's a two-headed monster or an RB2, like a clear RB2. He's a compliment. But I think as a compliment, you want somebody who's either like super fast, can stretch the field, good speed, or they're like an amazing pass catching back. I don't think he's either. I think he's kind of a volume guy. I think that he's probably best utilized, honestly, the way he was in college, where he just grinds you down. And that's not the way the NFL is played. So I don't think he has a profile that fits what a lot of teams are looking for. I think that he's going to be in a situation where he'll have to take a couple $1 million. Maybe I'm wrong. I'd be surprised if I'm wrong, but I could be wrong.
Could totally turn out that way. Yeah. I think it has to be that way for him to come back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree. And if he doesn't, I'm okay with that. I'm honestly okay with that. Go roll with Chandler. Roll with Wangwu, even though they seem to hate him as a running back. Don't know why. And roll with either a vet, 1-year deal, or another rookie. That's fine, too. We've got Ron Johnson coming up on the program. Before he gets here, make sure to check out Locked On Sports Today, the biggest stories around the sports world in 20 minutes or less, plus instant reactions, game recaps, and Locked On's Take of the Day. Locked On Sports Today, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. While we wait for Ron,
just kind of wrap up and put a little bow on that free agent discussion.
Go for it.
We're keeping Brandel. We're keeping Tonga, right?
Oh, yeah.
Both ERFAs, super cheap deals, kind of no-brainers. Everybody else, Ben Ellison, Austin Schlottman. Now that I got the list pulled up.
A lot of whoever's,
Yeah, a lot of whoever's. Save every penny you can. I'm with you, Sam. BC and Chris Boyd, vet minimum. Sure, come on back for training camp. But if not, great run. DePaulo, he's a free agent.
DePaulo,
best long snapper in the league.
I think you got to keep him.
Bring him back.
You got to lock him
Pro
up.
Bowler Andrew DePaulo.
Lock him up for as long as his body can play.
He's on the priority list, maybe. Here's Ron Johnson. He hosts the Ron Johnson Show Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, with the Roundtable on Fridays. And he joins us now. Ron, I was just about to get into this talker. We were mentioning Pro Bowl long snapper Andrew DePaulo. The Pro Bowl is coming up. It's Pro Bowl week. And it's not a game. It's a contest. It's a skills competition. Do you like the form that the Pro Bowl has now taken?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it was getting ridiculous. If they were to go back to old school Pro Bowl where it was a decent amount of football being played, then I might question it. But honestly, like, one, it's a Pro Bowl. You think about the All-Star game with the NBA, they're not out there to get hurt. They're just out there to have fun and play games. You look at Major League Baseball, like baseball, really, there's no real way to get injured unless you just run into a wall or do something stupid or hurt a hamstring. So same deal, though. They're not going out there exerting too much energy. It's more about the skills challenge. It's more about seeing the guys playing a game. The NFL was the only sport where you could see a guy like Sean Taylor absolutely decapitate a punter, or you could see a safety trying to make a play on the ball, not purposely trying to blow up a receiver, but blow up a receiver. You could see a running back trying to get that extra yard and run a linebacker over in a big collision. So I think the NFL, like, it first started with like quarterbacks. We're not going to take the quarterbacks to the ground. Don't hit them. Just once you get by them, we'll blow the whistle. They're dead. Then it got to like, well, let's not take anybody to the ground. Let's do this. So, I mean, yes, the direction it was headed, it had to go there.
Tyler Huntley was in the news. He was named to the Pro Bowl after only playing in 6 games, and I think he threw 2 touchdowns. What do you make of that?
2 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. It's one of those things where, who knows what number he was on that list. We won't know. I mean, unless somebody really digs into it, if, how many quarterbacks declined before they got down to Tyler Huntley. My guess is every single one of them probably, but it's one of those things where they're trying to fill a spot. Like, we needed a quarterback, so we're filling it. I said this on my show that forget filling it with a quarterback. If a quarterback from the AFC drops out, because it's not, you don't need a quarterback. Now I get it in flag football, but in flag football, Tyreek Hill could play quarterback. You don't need, and we probably will see something like that. We'll see a bunch of non-quarterback guys throwing passes and trying to get there behind center and doing the shotgun deal. And because that's what flag football is about. So at that point, I don't know if you need a Tyler Huntley just to fill a quarterback spot versus just go out and get the next best player that would have been a Pro Bowler. So if it is, let's just say, I mean, he's already in it, but let's just say it is Jamar Chase or T. Higgins or somebody like that. Like, go get them. Now, again, those guys just played and they probably don't want to play anymore because they lost and they're not going to the Super Bowl. But there's some better players that had bigger seasons that might feel like they're snubbed versus going for a Tyler Huntley just to fill a quarterback spot.
Inman, what do you got?
Yeah. Hey, Ron, Senior Bowl this week. I've been down there plenty of times. A lot of fun. Huge opportunity for those guys to get in front of all the scouts and coaches. How much do you think it really can help a player's draft stock, though? Like, ultimately, how much weight should we put into this week of practice versus the 4 years of college tape we have to go off of? And I guess same question about the combine, too, as a player who's been through the process. Like, we kind of learned by now, like, a 40-yard dash doesn't really equate to being a better football player.
Yeah, well, I mean, so you can't coach speed. You can't, you want to see how fast a guy is. That stuff is more of like, how fast is this DN really? You look at guys like DK Metcalf, when they get out there, and Justin Jefferson, they solidified that they are fast. Jamar Chase, they solidified their game speed is real speed. And so there is some real numbers you can take from it. Same vice versa. Guy gets out there, runs a 4.8. And you're like, oh, man, this guy's not as fast as we thought he was. Like, it does help and hurt you. Now, the Senior Bowl, though, and the Combine are 2 totally different things. Combine is more so just like, let's see this guy move. The Senior Bowl, you're actually putting pads on. You're actually doing drills in practice. You're actually going against the top players in the country. You're doing one-on-ones and pads versus the top DBs. Top DBs are facing the top receivers. Quarterbacks are throwing to top receivers and getting that NFL game speed down. So you really do get a chance to see some of these guys. And then when the pads are on and it's like, hey, this is a live period, or these scouts are watching these offensive linemen. I think offensive linemen really, it comes down to them, linebackers, running backs. Like, it comes down to like, how well does this guy pass block? How well, how smart is this guy to realize who he needs to help out? Receiver, same thing. Like, they do simple coverages because they don't want to confuse the kids, but who can recognize quickly a cover 2 versus cover 3? Who can recognize quickly quarters coverage that then rolls down to a 2 shell and his route has to change? So they're putting these guys in real situations that they're going to run into in the NFL, and then they want to see how they handle it. So I think for the top guys, it just kind of puts them there. But there are some late round 7th, 6th round picks that can jump to the 4th because they have a great Senior Bowl week. And scouts like you, that's the thing. It only takes one scout to fall in love with you. It only takes one team to fall in love with you to get your stock up. I mean, look at Mitchell Trubisky. So all it took was one or two teams to fall in love with them, and not a knock on them. I'm just saying, like, when you look at that, and then all the teams that passed on Patrick Mahomes because, he doesn't have the footwork. Oh, he doesn't have the mechanics of a top pro, and they questioned it. And so, the Chiefs were so close with Alex Smith. They don't need Patrick Mahomes. Like, why are they drafting the quarterback? They don't need that. Now all those same, analysts are like, not speaking on it now because guys said it, and so I think that's the key for this is like guys can actually solidify and jump rounds when you find one team to just fall in love with what you do.
Ron, I got to ask you about the Gophers. I don't know them very well. I know we got John Michael Schmitz. Everybody's talking about him. Mm-hmm. What other Gophers should I have an eye on at the Senior Bowl or just like draft in general?
Draft in general. So you look at the Shrine game, you got Terrell Smith, you got Howden. And Terrell Smith, actually, I think at the Shrine game, he was, Bucky Brooks put him in one of his top 5 players of the day, so, and he was a really good freshman. He was a really good sophomore, kind of fell off during COVID. And I think a lot of people forget how stressful it is for a college kid during COVID because you don't have the family support. You're kind of stuck in the dorm. You're trying to figure out like, okay, should I go home? Should I just stay here and practice? Classes online only. So he was one of the casualties of COVID, I could tell, because he just didn't mentally have it. Kind of bounced back this year, had a good year, and then got invited to the Shrine and had one of the, I think 2 days in a row, had like great days where scouts are talking to him, reporters are interviewing him. But he was always a good corner. He was good his freshman and sophomore year. He just kind of fell off, so people forgot about him. When you look at John Michael Schmidt, of course, we already know what he is, but Tanner Morgan's down there as well at a top draft game or whatever, top college player game and situation. And he's making some good throws as well. Like they had him listed, dropping some dimes. And so I'd say that, but those like Jordan Houghton and Terrell Smith, I'd say those are for sure guys to keep an eye on. Cause Houghton, when you look at him playing alongside Tyler Nubin all year, Tyler Nubin is going to be regarded as one of the top safeties next year. And Howden learned from him, but he also learned from Tyler Nubin learned from Jordan Howden. Jordan Howden learned from Antoine Winfield. So similar type of mindset, lineage, play. I think Jordan Howden, not to say he'll be who knows if he'll get drafted, maybe late round. But he definitely is a guy that can come in and play special teams and eventually, contribute on the field.
Ron, if the Vikings took John Michael Schmitz with the first round pick, and let's say they left some really good cornerbacks on the board, like, do you think that's a good decision for the Vikings? Like trying to remove ourselves from the fact that he's a Gopher. Would you take him over some other defensive players with that pick?
Yeah, because I said Creed Humphrey before. I thought that was a guy they could have drafted and jumped up and went and got. The kid from Iowa, I think last year was one of the top centers, and we talked about possibly going to get him. And so when you look at that, when you look at we've had this conversation for years, it felt like they're missing a piece. Like we thought it was Elflein, then it was Bradbury, and then again that doesn't fit what Kevin O'Connell wants to do. It fit Mike Zimmer's scheme, but it doesn't fit Kevin O'Connell's scheme per se. When you look at a guy like a Bradbury that maybe can move to a guard and be a better guard to let Ed Ingram learn and be a swing guard even. John Michael Schmidt clearly is one of the best offensive linemen in the country. Could have left last year, but got hurt in the bowl game. So, yeah, I wouldn't be opposed to that because every year that's what Vikings fans talk about. Who's going to play offensive line? Can he play guard? Can he play center? Blah, blah. Well, yes, he can. He can play both. So, no, I wouldn't be opposed to that because when you look at Duke Shelley, you look at some of these free agents that are going to be on the market as well. I think the Vikings are actually an intriguing landing spot now for people looking at the team that was 13-4. Coordinator's going to do it again. He's going to run it back. We'll see how the offense looks as they start to cut guys and mold this offense and restructure contracts. But I think for a DB looking like, hey, I can go to Minnesota and just start or play for sure. Mm-hmm. It's actually a pretty good, and we still have you're going to have a pot. Hopefully he comes back, but a healthy Caleb Evans, a healthy Cam Dantzler, and a Duke Shelley. So, as much as we wanted those guys to play when they were hurt, we'll have them back next year. We don't know what you're going to get out of Andrew Booth Jr. So, I mean, I think there's a lot of cornerbacks already on the roster where there's not a lot of interior linemen on this roster.
Yeah, that's a good point, Ron. And one last one before you go. We were having this conversation earlier in the show. We all agree that of all the free agents, there's one guy who's going to be super expensive, but that we would all pursue, and that's Dalvin Tomlinson. We would pay him what he's worth if you can free up the cap space. So, Ron, knowing what the financial limitations are of this team, would you prioritize getting Dalvin Tomlinson back on this roster?
Oh, that's a tough one. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know because I don't know how much Linval Joseph has left. Like it looks like the Eagles are using him in certain situations. It would depend on the dollar amount. Like again, when it comes to the NFL, when you look at players, there's only so much you can spend before you have to move on. Like the Jets with Quinnen Williams and all their guys, their young guys. You look at the Eagles with how they did it, where they brought in Ndamukong Suh and Linval Joseph, because that's where they struggled. They had enough pieces offensively because they went and got A.J. Brown. They had Jalen Hurts. They had an offensive line. They have cornerbacks because they got Bradbury and they got Slay. So when you look at all the players they have, you're like, oh man, what do they make? Yeah, Brandon Graham rushing the quarterback. They were like, look, we're getting killed in the run, and so they went out and got guys to fill it. So I don't know if I would prioritize Dalvin Tomlinson to the point where it's gonna really affect the cap, because I think that's where you have to figure out where can you get away with being finding a guy, I guess you'll say, and I feel like that's one of them, because again, draft wise, if they can make some trades with some early picks to maybe get 2 third-rounders, there's some value guys out there. I think D lineman this year is not like the Julius Peppers years where all the D linemen are going in the top 15 and all that stuff. Like this is a weird, because this is this gap. We're starting to get these gap COVID kids now. So this is that weird time where we're going to get a lot of 25, 24-year-old draft picks, 26-year-old draft picks, because they hit that COVID gap, but now their COVID eligibility is gone. So they have to leave. But now that's what we're seeing hit the draft, and that's why it feels a little bit different. John Michael Schmidt's being a little older. Guys are older, a little bit wiser. So there might be some guys out there that are not 21-year-olds that you're like, oh, we gotta mold this guy. Like the guy's 25 already. So he's going to kind of come in with a mature body. And I think that's what scouts are out scouring the Senior Bowl. Like, wait, this is a 25-year-old senior. Like this guy can come in and play 3 or 4 years for us right now. In the second, third round, because he is older. He has hit that growth. He already hit that spurt that a lot of NFL guys hit, second, third year in the league.
Yeah, I'll agree with you that, the Vikings could have a big old competition for those line spots with Tonga and Odamewo and Blacklock and James Lynch and draft pick, whoever I'm forgetting as well. They've definitely got plenty of bodies that can try to fit in there. Ron, people can hear your show Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Fridays. Awesome guests on of late. Clinton Portis, Fox Sports Radio host Jason Smith, Travis Stevens. You've got Tommy Harris coming up and some other big name guests. Make sure to check that out. Subscribe to Locked On Sports Minnesota. Get the Ron Johnson Show. Thanks a lot, Ron.
And make sure you tune in Tuesday because we'll have Keefe, Buccaneers, fullback tight end. So we'll have him talking about no more Tom Brady. What does that mean for the Buccaneers and how does he feel about it?
Yeah, that'll be a good one. Former Gopher, Keefe. That'll be great. Appreciate your time, Ron. Thanks.
Thanks,
right,
thanks Ron.
Great stuff as usual from Ron Johnson. Parlay time and an update. Remember on last week's parlays, we all lost. We didn't even survive the first game. We went 0 for 4. So these are the standings. Luke, you are the only winner through the first 2 weeks. You are at negative $40. Negative $40. Arif, Braun, myself, negative 1,000. Our contest is we're doing a $500 parlay every week using FanDuel, FanDuel.com. And even though we don't have a Super Bowl or a football game this week, I'm opening it up. I'm letting you do whatever you want. NBA, NHL, golf, tennis, it's all on the table. So let's start with, I don't know what order we go in, doesn't really matter. Let's go with the leader, Luke Inman. Give me a parlay. And how are you going to approach this? Because you've got the lead. You got to protect that lead. What direction are you going to go?
Not a lot of realistic options here. I'm looking, let's see, martial arts, UFC. Nah, not really my wheelhouse like it is yours, Sam.
Love
soccer,
me some martial arts.
Tennis, golf, hockey. I got to go NBA. And, if we have to put in our ticket today really the only options when I start to get into player props are only tonight's slate of games. So I'm looking at the Milwaukee Bucks Clippers. I'm going to go Giannis with a combo stat. So that's points, rebounds, and assists. You pull them all together, and right now I can get 50 or more, so over 49.5 at minus 167. And I'm going to add in Nikola Jokic over 10.5 rebounds at minus 201. You put those together, I'm looking at plus 140 on my parlay sheet. Pretty conservative, especially I know, compared to some of the stuff you guys do, but I'm trying to protect my lead here this week, Sam.
I can appreciate that. So plus 140 for Inman. How about you, Braun?
Oh, you let me go anywhere. I went to weird places. I also wanted to do a fairly conservative one just because I got to hit one, right? So I went to the tennis court. And later today, actually, it might have already kicked off by the time the show comes out, Renata Zarazua versus Emil Arango. I'm taking Zarazua at minus 152 and adding it to a darts game.
Wow.
Gerwin Price versus Nathan Aspinall. Gerwin Price is also favored. Parlay those two. It's plus 153, a conservative parlay. These are people who I definitely knew about before I logged on to FanDuel roughly 20 minutes ago. And it's absolutely something that I've researched and taken my time to figure out. I feel real good about these picks.
So the names were Zarazua to win tennis and Price to win darts. That's all I'm going to write down. Is that correct?
Yes.
At minus 152.
I will put their names in the chat.
All right. Minus 152. I got that right.
Plus 153 is the parlay in total.
Oh, I heard that way wrong. All right. Arif has gone also very convoluted. So he's got Luka to get a double-double with the Mavericks winning. He's got LeBron getting 30-plus points and the Lakers winning.
What are we doing? We're off the rails. We're off the rails.
A double-double.
Somebody named Jet Howard, who I don't know which team he plays for. He's going to make 4+ 3-pointers in the Michigan Northwestern college basketball game.
Number 13 for your Michigan Wolverines.
For the
the guard, Jet Howard.
All right, love him. So that all adds up to plus 1684. 500 to win 8400.
Wow. He's going to hit it. Watch
him hit it.
That's awesome. I hope he wins. It'd be an awesome story. I'm also going to the tennis court.
Yes.
So I knew it.
Let's get weird.
So I got weird the previous two attempts, and I went long shots. I'm reverse approach this week. So there are 4 tennis players that are heavy favorites in something called the ITF Rome, which I assume is a tennis tournament. Their last, I don't know their first names. Their last names are Kruger at minus 490, Stearns at minus 470, Montgomery at minus 700, and Lee at minus 440. I want all 4 of them to win, and that parlay comes out to plus 104. So basically even odds. Kruger, Stearns, Montgomery, Lee, plus 104.
Of those 4, who do you think has the best serve?
It's not about the first serve. It's about the second serve, Bron. So I'm really concerned about the second serve. I mean, I love the velocity of Stearns, but I like the accuracy of Kruger.
I need a tennis person to check that. Was Sam correct at all?
I think Montgomery double faults a little too much. That's why I don't have faith in him or her. I don't know gender. I don't know if this is a women's tournament or a man's tournament because I don't know.
So they them be safe.
I truly don't. But that's the fun in this. So can't wait to watch the Tennis Channel later if I get it. I assume I do. And the Darts Channel. Let's find that for Braun.
Darts is electrifying. I'm excited to watch Darts.
Amazing.
So good. The perfect round. Do you send that to me, Luke? The perfect darts round?
Oh, yeah.
Incredible.
Phenomenal. The announcers are great. I might actually go pursue a darts announcing career.
We should go to one of those events.
Oh,
Maybe the winner of this, everybody else has to buy that person a ticket.
a ticket to it. Next time the Vikings are in London, because that's where they really take it serious.
Yeah.
Beauty. Final segment of the show.
It's time to tell you who spilled their proverbial drink on the sofa. Get ready for this week's party foul.
Here's a little golf for all my golf fans out there. There was a tournament last year, maybe you've seen the clip, where Jordan Spieth hit a shot hanging off a cliff. He was 1 foot from plunging to his death, had to take a full swing at a golf ball, hit it over a canyon with his foot inches from sure destruction. Pebble Beach, where the tournament was played, has decided to try to eliminate that kind of risk. They have grown out the rough. They're trying to avoid having golf balls get that close to the edge of the cliff. This is a huge party foul. You're saying there's going to be less death-defying shots in golf? I want more. I want more cliff shots in golf, not less. I tune in for the death-defying golf shots. So big party foul on Pebble Beach's part. Thin down the rough. Get them up against the cliff. Make them choose between par and their life.
Make golf a little more interesting.
Yeah.
Make the sport up. Let's get some electric thrills.
You got to compete with Live Golf somehow, and this is how you do it.
Oh, no. I'm going to go with... you could point this a number of directions. It's the Pittsburgh Steelers. Pat Freiermuth basically says that the Steelers offense was very simple and did not have hot reads. For those who don't know, a hot read is a pre-snap usually designation the quarterback makes if he thinks he's going to get blitzed and that there will be an unblocked rusher. It becomes the quarterback's responsibility to sort of account for that rusher by getting the ball out. Every high school offense has this. This is very, very basic. And if the Steelers couldn't do it, that's a party foul. I think the implication is that Kenny Pickett wasn't ready. Like, it had to be simplified for him because he was so not ready to play that they had to take those out of there. So party foul on Pickett for not being able to throw hot. You should be able to do that coming out of the box if you're going to be a first-round quarterback. And kind of party foul on Pat Freiermuth a little bit for spilling the beans. That maybe that one should stay in-house. So rough stuff over there in Pittsburgh.
Inman.
I didn't have one ready. I just kind of winged one, but you know what? I just pulled up a article on ESPN about all the different Super Bowl props. And I know we just had a lot of fun with our gambling segment going off the wall, but I used to have a lot of fun with all the Super Bowl props. If you're legitimate, actually trying to make some money though, stay away from some of those props. The Gatorade color. I know it seems fun. The over-under. No, wait a minute. The over-under on the length of the national anthem. I mean, guys, what are we doing? You're going to blow your whole bankroll before the kickoff even starts. I'm just saying, if you want to have fun, go for it. Have a field day. But if you're trying to make some real money, stick to the game itself.
I am going to make if you're trying to be a sharp then, because I'm not a sharp. When I
Mike Gelfand,
I lose.
Longtime sharp. We've worked with him before in different iterations of this show. He lives and dies by the following bet. Under on the yardage of the first rush, which is usually about 3.5. It hits at an astounding rate.
Okay. The under hits.
Saying. So under like 3.5 yards, opening rush of the game. Great.
Wow.
Bet.
What a sneaky bet. Love that.
Yeah. I am going to say this out loud. Hold me to this or don't, because it'd be probably to your advantage if I don't. When we do our Super Bowl parlays next week, I am going to keep it to gameplay because I don't want to lose before the kickoff. That would suck. I am going to keep it so that I can have interest for 4 full quarters. That's my goal, is to be that disciplined.
They're enticing, man. They're fun. It's like a kid in a candy store. Like some of them you're might have some insider info or Gatorade was orange last year. And then in 2021, it was blue. So red is due.
It's the Chiefs.
It's doing. It's plus
red,
450. I'm getting value.
The Chiefs like orange Gator. It's what were the colors in the AFC Championship and the NFC Championship. That's the best Gatorade color.
What's crazy, what always blows my mind is there's a guy out there who knows. There's a guy who does it. We got to find that guy.
Yeah,
He's out there
you
somewhere.
can't really algorithm that. A lot of the number stuff, it's put into a computer, but you can't really do that for Gatorade color. This is probably more offshore stuff, but I love when there's like announcer related props. Like one time Joe Buck having a beard was a prop, and Joe Buck just went on like Howard Stern and they asked him straight up and he said, no beard, or I don't know, whichever it was. He like gave all the answers to the quiz.
Oh, wow.
There's got to be some serious insider trading when that goes on. One time Al Michaels had a prop where it was, will he say Deflategate like 4.5 or more times?
I remember
Michaels,
that.
being the degenerate that he is, literally came back from break and said, Deflategate, Deflategate, Deflategate,
That's
Deflategate,
right.
Deflategate.
I remember that.
I guarantee he had 50 large on that. Think about what his
That's what
game
I'm
check was
saying.
for
There's
doing
some
the Super Bowl.
insider info to
Yeah.
be had somewhere. We just got to find it.
Al Michaels is such a degenerate. It's so funny.
You know, I'm back on it. I'm going with orange. I get it. All right. Pool our money, guys. I'm back on it.
If I ever reach a level in my play-by-play career, long ways from there, but if I'm ever the subject of a prop, I will clue you guys in.
There you go.
I'll let you know. Fun show, guys. We're back on Monday to talk about what else but the Pro Bowl and other good Vikings talkers. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to Locked On Sports Minnesota and follow along on Twitter at LockedOnMIN. He's Luke. I'm Sam. See you later on the Minnesota Football Party.